I stand here? Welcome. You're here for an interesting time. Yes, it is for diversity, and I am happy to be here to represent the diverse community and specifically the transgender community. One of the things that you all know right now is these are very challenging times. I've had many discussions. Even Stan and I were talking when he came in that there are a lot of challenging things that are gonna be of issue to all of us. And so part of what I want to do is kind of narrow my focus specifically today to talk about transgender and how that is evolving in this new administration, the challenges that transgender veterans in particular are facing, because it is going to be a strong challenge. Thankfully, Tom told you a lot about how I got here, so it's important for you to understand part of the evolution of where I came from, so you can kind of understand what was at stake when I made a gender transition and what that actually meant. But I grew up in Minnesota. I was the second of 4 boys. I went to high school. I actually went to a private boys' high school. Graduated, went to a private college, University of Puget Sound, joined an all-male fraternity, Sigma Nu, if anybody's out there. And after college, part of my story is that ever since I was 13 or 14, I wanted to wear that. I brought my own prop. This is the flight suit that I wore. Now, thankfully, I didn't wear it 20 years, but it's like that. I wore many of these during my career, but that's what we flew in when we flew in the B-52. So that was my normal uniform, was a flight suit. I wanted to fly since I was 14. When I got into the Air Force ROTC, they gave me a special deal. Some of you have learned that when you sign papers, it's important to read the papers. I was told by my commander that what I was signing was a temporary scholarship for a navigator, and that when I came back from the summer, I would be a pilot candidate. He lied to me. The first interesting challenge, he lied to me. So I spent 6 years as a navigator and then a bombardier in the B-52 competing to get to pilot training. Eventually did make it to pilot training, very challenging thing. Went through pilot training, graduated, after like 16 years, I had finally reached my goal. It's important, thank you. Part of the reason I tell you that is because what happens next creates a challenge and an understanding of what it meant to make a gender transition, because while I was, just after we had gone to pilot training, I had been sent to Squadron Officer School, which was leadership training for captains in the Air Force. At that school, I met my darling wife, Annie, and after a long, well, maybe not so long relationship, we decided to get married. But at the time, I was in Texas. Annie had gone to Okinawa on a short overseas tour, and so we were half a world apart trying to build a relationship. And through that process, which was a very challenging process, through that process we eventually got married, and the Air Force put us together as best the Air Force could, which meant that Annie was in Okinawa and I was on the island of Guam, 1,200 miles away. That's the solution, they said, was you should be thankful, you're always thankful, because I was in the same theater as Annie was. But that was the Pacific Theater. It's kind of a big theater. But Annie and I had been married 2 years, separate islands. Our first 2 years married were apart. And in the process, I had, as JB was saying, he grew up in the Apple world. I had my Apple II Plus computer hooked into the telephone modem back to America, where I went into a chat room, and in that chat room, something changed dramatically in me. In that chat room, I listened to two men talking about how they were the only two people they knew on Earth that felt like they were in the wrong body or presenting as the wrong gender, and all the challenges that they were going through. In that process, to me, it was like a lightning strike, because all my life I knew I was different. I just didn't know why I was different. There was no explanation of why I was different until I saw those people talking, and then I'm transgender. Now imagine I'm going to call Annie on the other island. Hey, I learned something funny the other day. It turns out I'm transgender. Now, the ending of the story is next year, Annie and I will have been together 40 years. We're just about to have our third grandchild. So all of that points out to where I was when this challenge happened. And the reason I'm telling you that is because out in the world, you're being presented with lots and lots of information about how scary transgender people are, and how amazingly quick you can do it in 6th grade. If you go to school as a boy, you can come back on Tuesday as a girl. It's like, man, it's a lot harder. It was a lot harder for me. It took me 10 years. I should have gone back to 2nd grade. So there's a lot of misinformation out there is what I'm trying to tell you. And part of what I want to tell you is then how hard was that for me to make a transition, because it's not something that is ever taken lightly. This is a life-changing choice. So I like to say this. When that happened, I was a tall, white, college-educated, military officer and pilot, married with 3 kids. That's in the land of where are you in the social strata? Was I not at the top? I mean, I had everything that you could want as a male in our society. So from that point of view, then you have to ask yourself, why would I give up that so that I could be this? And what that means is, think about this. When I made our transition, most people lost their wife, their kids, their house, their job, their career, everything. That's a choice to go from here to way down here. So is that taken lightly? No, this is not a thing that you just you're a high school football guy, you want to get into the girls' locker room, I think I'll be transgender, let's do it. No, it's not. It's something that is life-changing. Now, I have to say, overall, I have been extremely blessed. 40 years with Annie. Her story alone is a story and a half. How do you stay with a partner? What kind of love is that? We created a book. Jenny is sitting here. She helped us write a book called Loving Without Limits, because that's what it takes. You have to love somebody's soul to make it through a transition like that. So it's not taken lightly. Now, with that as a background, then you have to ask yourself, what are we facing now? Because there is a huge backlash against transgender people in general, but in specific right now in the military. Now, I'm talking to a predominantly military crowd. One of the things you have to understand is that you have a lot on the line when you start in for a career in the military, because many of you know that when you go through the military, you're serving 19, 20 years, now you get a reward. Now you can retire. 1 or 2 days short of that, you get nothing. And the reason I bring that up is because imagine now you're a transgender person in the military. When Annie and I were in the middle of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We didn't tell no one. For 10 years, we were the only people that knew, so that we could get to retirement. And when I retired in '94, then I started on my transition. That took like 10 years to do that. But that was specifically because it was not going to go well if I came out. Now understand this, flying a B-52 nuclear bomber, I'm carrying around 4 B-61 nuclear weapons in my airplane. I could have wiped out half of Russia with 4 of those. I only point that out because I had a top secret clearance. I was working on war plans. I was considered smart and capable up until then all of a sudden you make a transition and then, hey, all of a sudden what happened to my brain? All of a sudden I'm not capable. So all of a sudden I'm not respected. All of a sudden I am not to be trusted. It's like, well, the only thing that changed was this outer package. Okay, the brain and the mind, I'd like to think, is still good. So one of the challenges is, so what I want you to get from that is, A, transgender exists. We've always existed and we will always exist. This is just a difference in how you're looking at it. One of the challenges that we face is when President Trump took office, he immediately made an executive order that said, we are not going to have any transgender people coming in, and anybody who's in, we're going to kick out. So I want you to go back to that idea that, hey, you're 10, 12, 14 years in the military, you came in, you hid yourself, Obama said it was okay, you came out, Trump comes in, says you can't be in. Now, in the first round, they said, if you're in, you're grandfathered. But now that he's in again, no grandfather. Now, if you're in, you're out. Now, the average, there's 15,000 possibly transgender people in the military service right now that are under the gun right now. Now, to give you an idea of how this went, he made his executive order, and it was called Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring, this is the key words, restoring biological truth to the federal government. Biological truth. What is biological truth? Well, to President Trump, his words are, it is the policy of the United States to recognize 2 sexes, male and female. First of all, anybody who's been in the gender community, sex and gender are different. We've always kind of blended them together, but if you've been around me, sexuality is who you like to be in bed with, and gender is who you are internally. For years, we've always kind of blended those two. But in the process of saying that, he has now since declared that in America, there are only 2. I liken this to what I would call 6th grade biology, okay? Those of you who have kids or grandkids, you know that when you're in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, we simplify the world to say, there's boys and there's girls. So it's like, hey, you don't need to know like how it happens, how babies are made. We don't give you all of that information in 6th grade. But as you get older, you learn more. As you go to college, you learn that there is a wide variety of genders and gender presentations available in the world. So to then go back and declare that there are only 2 is an interesting point. This went to court, by the way, and part of what I'm going to read you is an understanding from a judge about how exactly wrong this executive order is. So after he made the executive order, then PFLAG, some of you people know that, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, they're very active. They took this to court, and there was a Judge Reyes who was doing this court case, and she made this presentation, or she asked this question of Jason Lynch. Jason Lynch was the lawyer that was there. And so the judge says to the lawyer, because she's not thinking this is a legal thing, she says, do you understand that not everyone that has an XX or XY chromosome is male or female, that there are differences? And he said, honestly, I don't. Not uncommon. That's not a common thought. So here's what she said. It's actually kind of really important because this executive order is premised on the assertion that is not biologically correct. There are anywhere from about 30 different intersex examples to someone who does not have, starting with somebody who does not have an XX or XY chromosome and is not just male or female. They're intersex. There are over 30 potential intersex examples. We've got genetic differences. This is college biology. We have genetic differences. We have people with triple X chromosomes. We have androgen insensitivity, which means XY genetically, they may have female external sex characteristics and internally have testes or male characteristics. There is a thing called 5-alpha reductase deficiency, which causes a testosterone problem, and that means that XY males can have female genitalia or ambiguous genitalia. Her point, and this is like this, my point being, she says, I'm happy to have you guys brief this more if you want, like go back and read some more because it's not quite right. She says, but I'm telling you right now that there are people who are neither male or female, and the premise of this executive order is incorrect. This is a challenge that all of us are going to face as we go forward in this administration, because there are a lot of people that are coming forward to try to scare and move you towards a point of view. One of the things that happened to me when I was in the Air Force training was I went to POW training. Anybody went through that yet? Well, I have to tell you, I was in that. And one of the things they wanted to do at POW training was the commandant of the camp, so we were captured and sent to camp. While we got there, the commandant comes out and he says, you're going to tell me information. And if you don't, I'm going to torture you. Now, of course, all of us were John Wayne alpha males, and we said, you know, name, rank, and service, I'm not getting nothing out of me. Turns out they can. There's a lot of things, and we realized they couldn't really like mangle us, but they did some interesting things. One of the things that they did to me was they put me in a box a little bigger than this. It was on the ground, and they crammed me in with their boot, and they put me in this box. I had no idea how long I was going to be there. I don't know if any of you are claustrophobic, but there, I have to tell you, when you're squished in a box so tight that your arms are going to sleep and you don't know, the guy next to me is freaking out. I was just like, oh, please shut that guy up. I'm on the edge. I'm about to freak out. They doused him with water, and thankfully he did. But it's through that idea of I'm going to torture you until you come to senses. It's that sort of bullying idea. Now, a lot of what the camp commandant wanted to do, and this is important in the environment that we're in right now, one of the things that bullies like to do is threaten you, show you kind of what they're going to do, and then get you to volunteer to do the thing they want you to do. So currently, hey, you're going to lose your job if you don't take this offer. Take this offer. If you do that, then they win, because then they can say, I didn't force you. You volunteered. Now, I will tell you, in POW training camp, at the very end of the training camp, I would say more than half of the people that were there 100 and some people there, more than half those guys were carrying logs and cleaning up the camp and helping the commandant. Thankfully, our group of 10 didn't. I escaped. Yay, I made it out. That was unusual. But what I did learn is that part of what you're seeing right now is the idea that I'm going to bully you until you voluntarily choose to do what I want you to do. And what I'm here to tell you today is I'm not going down that road. I'm standing my ground, and I hope that you guys too will stand your ground. Don't just volunteer and decide that you're going to comply with what they're doing. Just as a short history, after he made the executive order, it went to court, and Judge Reyes said this to Trump's lawyers. Trump's lawyers didn't like being humiliated in court, so what did they do? They started a lawsuit against her to harass her to give up her ideas. So thankfully she has not. And so where it stands now, they've gone back and forth. Part of what's happening is that the administration, through the Department of the Air Force and the Navy, Marines, they've all, Peter Hegseth has come out and said, you will comply, you will not be in the military, not. This is again coercion. He's telling them this is what's going to happen and you can't do it, and we're going to kick you out, but they can't yet. Judge Reyes on the 12th, which I guess is this coming week, is going to have the final resolution as to whether they can really make this statement. But realize they have gone really far so far. I mean, they're on the edge. Here's one other thing that I want to point out. One of the reasons that they wanted to do this, so the question comes up, why do you want to do this, Mr. Trump? Why do you want to do this? And his feeling was, his first original thing was, we got to do it because, oh my God, you won't believe how expensive transgender people are. Now, part of it, I have to say this, maybe I should have stayed in longer. Part of it is that there are certain circumstances where you can get into the military as a transgender person and then have them give you the medical care that you need to include possible surgery down the line, which is tens and tens of thousands of dollars, which would be it. But here's an interesting thing. For the 4 years that they studied, 26 to 2019, the military spent about $26 million on transgender care and a couple of surgeries. 1,800 people got care. And you think, wow, 26 million, that's a lot. Well, in the $800 billion budget, that was nothing. But that's a lot of money, right? So here's my counter to that. In those same 4 years, the U.S. military has spent $126 million for Viagra. For Viagra. 126, 4 to 5 times the total cost for Viagra. So my feeling is if you don't want transgender, we're not doing Viagra either. That might make some changes as we go down. But all of that just to say that be careful. Do some diligent research as to what's going on. I had some other things I wanted to talk about, but I'm just going to kind of end with this because transgender in the military is just one of the battles that transgender people are facing right now. But here's a couple others. They have restricted, or trying to restrict, passports so that your passport can only show male or female, and if you're transgender, it has to show your birth gender. Now, interesting, I've traveled the world on my passport, and believe it or not, my passport still has a little M in it. I've been over to Guam and through Japan. The only place that we had a problem with that was when we came back to Hawaii in America. Annie and I got accosted by the people because we came in and filled out our card when you come back in, and we filled it out as a family because we're married. And so when we went up to the window, the guy looks at us and he points his finger, and Annie and I both start walking. Oh, wait a sec, not both of you. And Annie says, well, wait a sec, we're married. And he, at the top of his voice, yells out to everybody, not in my state, you're not. I was like, whoa, I've been to Japan and back. I didn't think this would happen. Interestingly, if anybody knows Annie, she marched right up to this guy and said, listen, here's the deal. We are married, legally married, and if you have a problem with that, you get your supervisor out here right this second. Come on over. Stamp, 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 stamp. We're going to go. But that's another issue. They're trying to erase the word transgender from all government documents. They're trying to discount and hide any transgender things that have happened at NIH. They want to get rid of all of that research that's out there. They're trying to ban trans health. They're banning, of course, all DEI. Another topic we can talk about all day, transgender in sports. They're trying to do that. I have some thoughts on that. I'm not totally. And then transgender in prisons. Annie and her brother worked in the California state prison system for a long time. And it is a challenge. If you were to put me into a male prison, I would probably not do well in a male prison. So there are lots of things that are challenging. And then the question that, and where I'll end is you have to ask yourself, so what do I do? So what do I do? First of all, I encourage you to ask yourself, what's going on? When you watch the news in whatever channels, we are now in little silo channels of news. I, like many, switch back and forth so I can get a broad base. But ask yourself, when they start making these changes, ask yourself, does that make sense? Is there other consequences to that? I would ask you first and foremost, from my spiritual heart, be the best person you can be. When you go out into the world, no matter which side of the political spectrum you might be on or in the middle, when you're talking to someone else, listen. Let them say what they're going to say. Don't go straight for revenge. Listen to what they have to say, and let that, say your piece and let them say what they are. Seek understanding, not revenge. On the other hand, don't give up. Don't allow that coercion to take place. Don't let them threaten you into volunteering to give up your rights. Stand up for your rights. We have values. One of the things that I wanted to say is think about what you want. Think about the America that you want and what does that look like. And from my point of view, I want the America that I was fighting for 20 years in the military against those Ruskies. Those were the bad guys when I was in. I was fighting for personal freedom, not just only my freedom to be who I am, but your freedom to be who you are. If you are on the right, I'm not, but if you are, that's okay. This is America. I welcome you. We are Americans. I want to be safe. I want to be able to walk down the street and not get shot. I think parents want to have the freedom to train their children as they deem fit. Women want to have control over bodies, right? I would like to make health choices with my doctor, not my congressman. In the end, I want America to be a place that I can follow my dreams and that we can be as free and as happy as we can possibly be. Thank you very much.